eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization. Now, let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving a degree of relief and hope to talented, driven, patriotic young people. It is the right thing to do. Excuse me, sir. It's not time for questions, sir. Not while I'm speaking.
Not while I'm speaking.
Precisely because this is temporary. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization. Now, let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving...
Temporary. Now, we know how long some people have been on DACA. In fact, there are people who are on DACA till this day. And temporary means just that, just temporary. But this is what I mean about Barack drama and the Democrats set y'all up. They knew that in 2012 when he came up with DACA. And they told y'all that. There was a documentary series on Netflix, came out around 2020. And it was about ICE. Now, the first time I watched it, I had a different perspective on life in the world. And I was like, how dare these white demons hunt down these people just working? And then Kamala Harris happened, and 20 million illegals came across the border, and I happened to reside in a sanctuary city, and I saw firsthand the crime, the recklessness, the I don't give a fuck and anti-American attitude, the anti-black American attitude. Diabolico. Yes, I witnessed all these things. I watched these people walk around my community with flags on their back like they were capes, like they were superheroes. No bullshit. And the numbers of them was so fucking... I was dumbfounded to see Soundview turned from what it was to literally South America. And I have nothing against anyone. I'm just telling you what I experienced and what I saw. Anyways, let's get back down to business about the setup. Now, in that documentary series, though, ICE was very clear then. This was the first time that Trump was in office. And they literally said, ICE has been operating for years. And they always worked with law enforcement, and they always picked up the criminals. And what ICE said in that documentary in 2020 on Netflix, you can go watch it. I should clip it, but I don't want any copyright strikes. Anyways, I said then, we've always worked with local law enforcement, right? And we've always picked these people up directly from jail. And in the past, ICE only focused on actual criminals. And by actual criminals, crossing the border itself is a crime, but I mean violent criminals, murderers, rapists, blah, 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 and so on. That's what they were focusing on. And they said back then, if you all, which is what happened, became a sanctuary cities, if you stop working, because we're federal law enforcement, local state law enforcement have jurisdictions. Federal law enforcement, the country is their jurisdiction from sea to shining sea. You get it? But they said, if you stop allowing us to pick them up from the jails, we're going to hit the street and start doing sweeps. And when we do, anyone that is around the individual that we're taking into custody, we running their motherfucking papers too. And if they ain't got them, everybody going. And what happened? Hispanic or Latino illegal activists pushed through. They started in North Carolina, and they pushed through this bill in North Carolina that made where the local law enforcement, and it was a brother, a black dude, that was helping, where local law enforcement would no longer work with ICE. And it spread from there to all these other places that became what we now know as Democratic stronghold sanctuary cities. So basically, they told you, you can let us take the criminals, or we're going to take them all. Until this day, y'all continue to fight for the criminals. But again, Barack Obama set y'all up from the jump, right? So here's the question. How many people that signed up for DACA from its inception actually became legal citizens?
Short answer, very few. And only a tiny fraction became full U.S. citizens. Here's the reality behind the numbers. Since Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, began in 2012, roughly 800,000 plus people have participated at some point. But DACA does not provide legal status or a direct path to citizenship. It's more like a pause button on deportation plus a work permit, not a ladder to citizenship. Now the key numbers. About 76,000 DACA recipients had managed to get green cards, lawful permanent residents, as of 2019. Out of those, only around 4,000 had actually become U.S. citizens by that time. What that means in plain terms, imagine a stadium with 800,000 people, all who ever had DACA. A small section, 76,000, found a separate doorway to a green card, and a tiny cluster, 4,000, made it all the way to citizenship. That's well under 1% becoming citizens. Why so low? Because DACA itself is not a bridge. It's more like a waiting room. To become a citizen, recipients must qualify through other paths like marriage to a U.S. citizen, employer sponsorship, family petitions, military service, in rare cases. Bottom line, DACA recipients who became citizens, 4,000, very small share. Most remain non-citizens, even after many years in the U.S. If you want, I can break down how those 4,000 actually pulled it off step by step. The routes are pretty telling.
Dirty work. A holding room. In other words, your beloved Prescott or Bush Kenyon, and by Bush, I don't mean the Bush, I mean George H.W. Bush, his cousin. Yeah, that nigga. Yeah, he put y'all in purgatory. And then his party that continues to play all of us, as I've shown you, because Malcolm and Martin warned us. But they continue to play you. And if you pay attention and listen to what all the illegals that came over, they are so loyal to the Democratic Party because they gave them a free ride. That was going to be their voting block. That was going to be their voting block and their new cheap labor. But y'all think it's a game.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district just for redistricting purposes. And those members could clearly fit here. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora.
What president has the most deportations in U.S. history? Wow, this is going to be interesting. Let's see.
If you're counting raw numbers, the title usually goes to Barack Obama. During his administration, there were about 3 million deportations, removals, the highest total recorded under any president. That's why critics sometimes nickname him the deporter-in-chief, even though the story has a few layers. The twist in the tale: not all deportations are counted the same way. Under Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, many people were turned away at the border, but counted differently, often as returns, not formal removals. Under Obama, policy shifted to count more formal removals, which makes his numbers look especially high on paper. Recent comparison. Donald Trump had fewer total deportations than Obama overall, though enforcement policies were stricter in certain ways. Bottom line, most deportations by official removals count Barack Obama. But depending on how you count border turnbacks versus formal removals, earlier presidents like Bush could rival or exceed those totals in a broader sense. If you want, I can line up a clean side-by-side chart of each president's numbers so you can see how the definitions change the story.
Pay attention and understand when you are being played. You see, it seems like a lot of America is caught up in this hypnotic rhythm and they can't get out of it. And because of that, they can't really see what's happening to them and how everybody's being played. But hey, what do I know? I'm just some guy talking into my phone. So yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. Realize, and transparency forces accountability. Now keep your eyes to the stars. Keep that head on a swivel. So we're in the diabolical den of demons, aka the Viper's Pit. I'll be safe out there.
Of all.
6 o'clock, the Mecklenburg County Sheriff firing back after he was criticized by ICE and the local U.S. Attorney over his immigration policy. The U.S. Attorney told us point blank yesterday the sheriff's actions are making the community less safe. All new tonight, WBTV investigative reporter David Hodges talked with Sheriff Gary McFadden.
I felt like it was important for this press conference, again, to clear up some of the things that we have.
At a news conference today, Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden defended his policy of not participating in 287G and not abiding by ICE detainers for undocumented immigrants in the jail.
We do not honor federal detainers. So in other words, you should not fax me a federal detainer.
So you think the sheriff is making Mecklenburg County less safe every time he doesn't abide by an ICE detainer?
No doubt in my mind.
In an interview with WBTV Wednesday, U.S. Attorney Andrew Murray said the policy is putting people in danger. On Tuesday, his office filed a criminal complaint against Luis Pineda-Ancheta for illegally re-entering the country. Murray says he did it to keep Pineda-Ancheta off the streets. He was arrested twice last month, both on domestic violence-related charges, the second time after a roughly 9-hour standoff with CMPD. But Pineda-Ancheta posted bond and was released from the county jail, even though he is an undocumented immigrant.
And somebody's going to significantly be injured or killed. And given the allegations in this case, it had real potential.
I dare anyone to say that I am not public safety concerned about that. Come to the streets where I am.
Mr. Murray, one of the arguments he made was that trying to get a federal warrant took up a lot of time and resources where it might just be easier if these detainers were honored. Why not do it that way?
Well, that's what they should have thought about when they were designing it.
So he can't control that now, though.
That is not my problem. That is a federal immigration problem.
That was our David Hodges reporting there. Now, Homeland Security sent WBTV a list of 21 other undocumented violent offenders who the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office has arrested but then released. David tried asking the sheriff, but he left and wouldn't take the question.
Many whites who are trying to solve the problem, but you never see them going under the label of liberals. That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox. And a fox is always more dangerous in the forest than the wolf. You can see the wolf coming. You know what he's up to. But the fox will fool you. He comes at you with his mouth shaped in such a way that even though you see his teeth, you think he's smiling. And you take him for a friend.
You picking this up yet or no? They are playing all of us. And they're just playing one side against the other. But at the end of the day, the true victims is going to be you. What you don't understand is that what you call oppression, you've aligned yourself with the side that is actually using you to manipulate you to put yourself into an oppressive situation. You see, if they would have let federal law enforcement do their job, there would be no sweep of all illegals it would only be the ones that were incarcerated. But again, these Hispanic and Latino illegal activism groups push for Sheriff McFadden to do this. And he was warned by the federal government that what's happening right now would be the outcome. Yet all these Democratic think tanks, all these Soros, all these Rockefeller and Walton paid nonprofits that are under umbrella companies that you think don't belong to them, funded, the No Kings rallies, NAACP, Dry Ice and LULAC, they're funding all this shit and then telling you to go out there so that Planeteer can use their technology to scan your face and triangulate your biological IP address so that when it comes time to spin the block like they did on the PP loans, oh my God. Whoo! Pay attention.